I'm just going live. It's good day. Hello and welcome. My name is Zoe Viney. I'm film curator at Wessex Film and Sound Archive. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Hopefully you're on your lunch break. I'm live at the moment on YouTube and on Facebook, and I've got 2 computers up and running. So if you have any questions as we go through, just give me a few moments to kind of process them, and I'll try and reply as best I can. So you may or may not have joined us for our online event for the VE Day celebrations in May. But that was our first attempt at doing an online event like this with a kind of screening attached, and it went really, really well. We had lots of good views and good comments. So we're having another go at doing it again. Hopefully I'm a little bit more practiced with the technology this time around, but you never know. So we'll try our best, and if anything goes wrong, we'll see what we can do to fix it. So we are running today's event as part of the Heritage Open Days festival, which runs between the 11th and the 20th of September. There are things going all over the country, actually. You probably have more access to things this year because lots of things are happening online, which means you can access things without having to go anywhere, which is fab. Ordinarily, for Heritage Open Days, we would offer behind-the-scenes tours at Hampshire Record Office, but we would also have our cinema tent in the garden, and it's a lovely sunny day today, so it would have been fantastic for it, but obviously circumstances do not allow. So we hope you enjoy today's screening and our introduction ahead of that. Just a little bit of housekeeping before I get started. I'm going to introduce the films here in the live session on Facebook and on YouTube. And then you can head over to see the film at 12:15, which goes live on our YouTube channel at 12:15. So that will be going live whether I'm still talking or not. So I shall try and finish my introduction on time, even if we've got questions, and you can still head on over with that link. I have popped it in the description for our live session, so you can get straight over there or open it in a separate tab ready to go once it goes live at 12:15. We also have a blog post which has all of the content that I'm going through in our introduction. So that will go live at 1 o'clock, and the link for that is in the description too. So you can head over and review all the content there as well. So the best of 100 days. At the start of lockdown, it was really important for us to ensure that we could continue to share content with you when we were working at home, but also when so many other people were going to be at home with a little bit more time to spare too. We decided to share film content at 9 a.m. every day on our YouTube channel, and we hope they would be a welcome addition to your day. Whether you saw it or not, over on our Wessex Film and Sound Archive YouTube channel, we gathered over 900 additional subscribers during the course of the 100 days. So it's really, really fab to see so many more people engaging with archive film. We had all sorts of different content going live. Today's screening is a compilation of some of the films that we screened during the 100 days, but giving you a little bit more insight, and hopefully my introduction will give you a little bit of an insight to some of the stories behind the films, whether it's the filmmakers or the content of the films themselves. The films that we're screening today, and I want to be clear, we're not choosing the most technologically advanced films or films. We've chosen films because they have a story to tell, and there are so many different stories in archive film, and it's so difficult sometimes to pick up on which story that you will tell and which ones we're actually able to tell. This year, we're working on a BFI National Lottery funded project with support from Hampshire Archives Trust, and the project aims to showcase the work of amateur filmmakers. And today's selection of films that I've chosen from our 100 Days collection have all been produced by amateurs. The first film that you will see today in our screening is by a lady, a female filmmaker, in fact, Emma Fritchley. Emma was born in 1902. She grew up in India, where her father commanded the wireless station in Bombay. And she met her husband there, Cecil, and they married when she was around 16, 17 years old, and they later returned to England in the early 1920s. We have lots of information about Emma from her family, which we keep on our catalogue. And her family reported that her filming interest started in around 1922, when she returned from India. And at this time, she was using a 16mm Cine Kodak cine camera. Before 1922, the technology just didn't exist to support the amateur market anywhere in the world, in fact, so it wasn't unique to the UK. Ordinary hobbyists had dabbled in film since around 1912 when safety film became available. But at this time, the equipment was just too heavy, cumbersome, and just really too prohibitively expensive for ordinary kind of non-professionals to access. So it wasn't really something that you could access even if you were keen. The US firm Eastman Kodak was also working on standardizing film equipment and film stock around this time and in the early years of the 20th century. And they kind of monopolized the market in the US, and I think they would have liked to have done the same on the continent too. So around this time, 35mm film was your available film stock. So we're talking around 1912. So at that time, you could either incur the massive cost to obtain a kind of semi-professional camera, or you could try and cut the film. And we talk about cost cutting. In the early days of kind of cinematography, people really did cut their film stock. By the time we get to 1922, when Emma's becoming active, the market for the amateur cine camera had been really well primed. So people were cinema going all of the time, and people really wanted to have a go themselves so they could kind of make movies of their own lives. The Cine Kodak was the first 16mm cine camera, and it was one of the first cameras to be marketed towards amateurs. It was an American import, but it had been fractionally beaten to the market by Pathé Frere's Pathé Baby in 1922. And the Pathé Baby camera used 9.5mm film. And that was a format that actually never quite made it back across the pond. So it was never really popular in the States, but we have an awful lot of 9.5mm film in the Wessex Film and Sound Archive collection. So what do we know about Emma Fritchley? We know that Emma really enjoyed the creative process. She really loved experimenting, and her family recounted to us how she would experiment with her old box camera in her trying to film herself in a series of mirrors without being kind of caught on camera. We know that she was able to obtain colour film stock from a friend she had in the States, and that friend kind of shipped it over for her. And she also kind of went to London to get her other Kodak film stock. Emma was an active or even founding member of the local film club in Fareham where she lived. Her family often got involved in the creative process, and her grandson used to help her cut and splice the film. So it was a real family activity, and she was obviously really, really passionate about it. Emma was a leading community figure in Fareham, and as a founding member of the film club in Fareham at the Ashcroft Centre. And she definitely passed on her enthusiasm for filmmaking to her family. And actually, we were able to kind of link up her films. Hampshire Cultural Trust actually holds some of her filmmaking equipment, and I believe it has been on display at Milestones Museum in Basingstoke. It's fantastic that we have so much information on Emma, and it's actually quite rare to have such detailed information about a filmmaker. So it's always nice to share and kind of understand where people are coming from when they're making their films. One of the challenges we have around recognising female amateur filmmakers is often to do with attribution and how things are catalogued. So often we have films which are attributed to the kind of the mister in a relationship. So the depositor is recorded as the male in a relationship, and often the female has had quite a big involvement in the filmmaking process too. There is ongoing work across the country to kind of recognise female amateurs a little bit more. So that's something we're working towards in our cataloguing as well. So from 1920s Fareham to the trenches of the First World War. The second film you will see in the screening today was taken on the front line and kind of that region in France. What's interesting about this film is that we don't always have detailed information about the people who made the film, like we do with Emma Fritchley, for example. But sometimes we have to do quite a lot of detective work to even find out the bare basics about a film. And detective work is where this film is the most interesting. On many occasions, we have to work on assumptions about a film. So they can be assumptions based on the film stock themselves, so the gauge, the condition, other characteristics of the film. We also have to think about assumptions that we make about the depositor of the film, what we know about them, what we've been told by them when the film's deposited with us. And that's where the kind of question of attribution can sometimes be challenging. So the second film in the screening today was given to us, deposited. I've got a lot to talk about before the film goes live, so I'm going to have to speed up. It was made by the King's Royal Rifle Corps. It's a 16mm reduction print, which means it was probably produced on 30, but then copied, reduced down so that it could be screened on 16mm projection after 1924. We have a number of films in the collection, KRRC and ancestor regiments. And during the First World War, the KRRC had around 28 battalions. There are very few markers in the film that we've been able to pin so that we can pinpoint various battalions. There are some intertitles which are very helpful, but obviously, as you'll see, it jumps around quite a lot, so it is quite difficult to tell who is who. What you will notice is a very interesting trench sign for Sutherland Avenue. And thanks to trench maps, which are wonderfully available online now, we've been able to identify Sutherland Avenue as being a communications trench serving the front line just outside La Ventie in France. And Sutherland Avenue departs at right angles from Rue de Terre, and we've actually been able to pinpoint it on a map. And if you check out our blog post that goes live at 1 o'clock, you'll be able to see a map of those trenches, which kind of brings it alive a little bit. What we do know from first-hand accounts and war records from this area of the front line is this area posed a particular challenge for trench warfare because the water table was really, really high. And this meant that trenches that did exist in this area were really severely waterlogged. And in many parts of the film, and I think he's in this front line, and you see it in the film, many parts of the line were breastworks above the ground. The Battle of Aubert took place very close by, and it was a really active part of the front line. We don't know where all of the footage was filmed in the war film that you'll see today, but we know that at least some of it was outside La Ventie. So from 1940 to 1918, all the way to 1956, we're seeing a film today of Newbury British Legion Fate. And so often when we're working with archive film, we have to play detective. Celebrities or people of standing are often really helpful in kind of helping us pin things down. And people such as the mayor, who is seen in this film of Newbury, can be easier to identify than other people. The clip of Newbury British Legion Fate in 1956 features a whole community in celebration. But we do see the mayor, which is really interesting. And we know that the mayor at this time was George Ernest Ellis. And he was actually a member of the Army Cyclist Corps during the First World War. So even though sometimes when we don't feel like we know anything about the people on screen, sometimes we can home in on just one person's story. But sometimes the stories could be more challenging to get at. And the next film you'll see in the screening is one of those where actually we have more questions raised than we do answers. It's a 1936 film by two local filmmakers, C.A. Russell and Ken Craigie. And there are intertitles in the film. They've been very ambitious. They've kind of been really structured in their filmmaking. But we know very little about them. They very helpfully put intertitles so we can kind of navigate our way through the film. And what's interesting is that what we do know about them is they were two cameramen, a pair of men working together to make films. And it has lots of intertitles to help us navigate through. This one was shot on 9.5mm film. So as I mentioned, this was one of the early amateur film stocks developed in France, and it was very popular in the UK. And then the last story today, before I stop talking and let you watch the films at 12:15, is from Charminster Mixed School. We screened this film during our VE Day event, and we had a story come back to us after we screened it, and I thought I'd share it with you today. It's the segment of colour footage that's included in a collection of films by Charminster Mixed School. And the colour footage shows the boys taking part in the Dig for Victory campaign. And we often hear stories about how film stocks, particularly during the war, because it was rationed and hard to come by, there's usually always a story about how film stock came to be used. And I put the full story in the blog post, so you can read the full synopsis of how it came to be there. But the headmaster of the school knew that the head boy at the time had an uncle who was in the Merchant Navy. And this gentleman in the Merchant Navy was going backwards and forwards between the UK and the US. And he was requested to purchase some colour film stock when he was in the US. And he duly did. He double wrapped the film stock and he sewed it inside his uniform. Unfortunately, the gentleman's ship was sunk or torpedoed twice on 2 occasions. The man actually survived both occasions in order and was then able to bring the film to England. So when you watch the colour footage towards the end of this film sequence today, I hope you'll appreciate the journey that the film stock went on in order to actually be filmed at all. The last film clip, again, is another film clip, which is colour, and we screened it during our VE Day event. as a result of screening the film footage, the depositor was actually able to get in touch with us to let us know that it was the first time he'd seen his mother and father's wedding. He didn't know the footage existed. So for me, archive film is fantastic. There are so many rabbit holes that are opened up as a result of watching a film. Sometimes we can join the dots, sometimes we can tell a whole story, as with Emma Fritchley. Other times we have more questions than answers. But ultimately, there are so many different opportunities and things to explore. So the film will be going live right now on YouTube. It's 12:15, so do head over there and watch it. I will be on the comments to offer a commentary or answer any questions that you might have as we go through. I hope you enjoyed my whistle-stop tour of an introduction. As I said, all of the details that I've run through this morning will be in full on our blog, which goes live at 1 today. So I hope you enjoy the film.